Kia ora, Lara here. You can find me on various social media as Scrappykea, is the same here on YouTube. Today I am working with Stamp It Like It's Hot, and we have each month there is sort of a stamping challenge or a stamping theme that we're to work on, and this month for January it is stamping on a photo. Now I am using the Skylark collection, which is a Bring Back My Pack from Close to My Heart, and I've just used the stamp set from this collection, and the first one I've done down the bottom is a banner and it just says you and me, and now there's kind of like sort of a floral old-fashioned design that I've just stamped along the top of this stamp. Now I went to use my StazOn, but it was dry, so I have used the Intense Black ink by Close to My Heart after a bit of playing around with it, and it does it eventually sets, but it does take quite a long time. I had to leave it for about 24 hours before it was set so that I could touch it without smudging it too much, and so if you're using inks other than a StazOn, which I would recommend, but check your StazOn first. Mine was dry as a bone. I have ordered some StazOn refill, and so hopefully in the next day or so I'll be back in action if I want to stamp on sort of shiny surfaces. So StazOn's a really good ink choice for on like acetate or anything sort of non-porous and shiny, just like these photos. So these were just printed on my Canon Selfie using the glossy option. And so therefore they sort of don't have that, they don't have anything porous, so there's nothing for the ink to soak into. So that is sort of a little bit of an ink lesson, I guess. You can Google lots of the different inks and find out what they do and what their purpose is. Part of the Skylark collection includes this really cool stencil. Now I've used this quite a bit lately. Normally I've used it, you can sort of see it's a bit dirty there. I should have cleaned it first, but I'm kind of doing a mixed media, and this paper collection that I'm using is a little bit rustic and a little bit marked up and coloured and stuff like that, so it's not a problem. But I'm just pushing through some texture paste in here, and I think it's a matte texture paste, and I've just gone sort of all over but not on the outside. I've sort of got a huge clump up the top left there and a little bit down the bottom, and then I've set that aside and let that dry for a good 10-15 minutes. It dries pretty quickly, especially over here in the summer in New Zealand. So now I've sort of got that really cool texture in that background on that paper. It was already really nice paper. It had lots of sort of messed upness, but I just wanted a bit more depth and feeling to it. So I'm now just trimming up some of these Skylark papers to 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, which is the same size as my 2 photo mats that I've got there, where I backed the photographs with white, and you can see I'm being quite tender with this photo here now as well with that inking on it, because I haven't allowed it that time to dry yet. So I'm just sort of cutting another paper mat from some other sides of the patterned papers that are in this collection. And I'm doing the same with the other photos. So both of these photos were taken on New Year's Eve, so on the 31st of December 2023. Normally my husband and I would be sort of staying up late at a camp over at Lakeland Park in Queenstown. We're sort of involved in a New Year's family camp over there. This year Jace was pretty much cooking and I was his helper, so we sort of came home early. So with this camp, it's a Christian camp and people actually stay on site sort of for 4 nights and 5 days. However, in this case, we stayed at home. It's only sort of a 20-minute drive and I get to have my own bed and shower, but it also meant that New Year's Eve we came home and went and took the dog for a walk, and the dog was the main reason we are staying at home this year. And then we sat in the spa, and it was actually a really nice relaxed way to end and say goodbye to 2023. So hence the feet in the spa and the picture of the two of us. All of our kids were away, so we've got adult children, and they were all at different places, some in the South Island, some in the North, but so it was just us and the dog. So it was just a really chill, relaxed and nice evening, and what better than to spend it with the one I love. So anyway, enough sort of about that. This collection is very much kind of an old-fashioned romantic collection. So the stamp set does have a lot of love, a lot of care, I'm not sure how to describe it exactly. Perhaps romantic is probably the best way to describe that. But I'm now just using a few of the stamps from that set. I like that they are background, that they are kind of general, and they just help to mess it up a little bit. This heart's got a bit of a swirl in it, so as well as the solid colour that is sort of adding a little bit of something extra to this photo background, to the sort of distressed background that's already on the paper. It just sort of adds to it. Now I've decided for my title that I'm going to pull out some older foam alpha. So these are pretty white, and they were going to be a bit plain and stand out. So I've actually decided that once I've pulled the lettering out that I'm going to use, I'm going to stamp them. So once I've got VYE 23, which is by 23, so it's kind of like end of the year, goodbye 2023, I am going to use a couple of those stamps that I just stamped onto the photo, and I'm using the Intense Black again, just because it does seem to have it's the ink that I would use if I was doing watercolouring, and so it just seems to have that little bit more non-soaking nature, I guess. So just stamping that with both that floral one and sort of that swirly one, and I need to set that aside to let it dry. So while that's drying, I'm going to rough up the edges of the papers and the photo mat just to give another added texture dimension. It's not really a layout that I feel would suit lots of flat straight lines. The paper in the background helps sort of set that scene without I don't want those sort of sharp, straight, even lines. So roughing up the paper gives me that ability to change that around. So now I'm sort of looking at what other possible embellishments I could add, and while I sort of think through that processing, I'm just adding the journaling, just basically what I told you before about it, taking the dog for a walk and sitting in the spa to finish off our 2023. Wasn't even awake at midnight, so it's probably the first year in a long time that I haven't been awake at midnight. So I have found some other embellishments after I've stuck this title on down there, and I am being quite careful not to touch it too much because I don't think it is fully dried yet. But I was thinking through embellishments that I had, and there was a set that I had earlier in the year, and I knew I had a few left on it, and it kind of was sort of a creamy colour with writing and sort of that distressed nature to it. So here it is here. So I'm just going to use a couple of the flowers from that, and I'm going to place them at various points on the layout. I'd hoped I still had some hearts left on that set, but I didn't. And I didn't really feel like stamping some shapes and things. I just wanted to finish this off, and so I'm using what I've got, and I'm using here the thin 3D foam dots that I've had for a while, but it just helps to lift them off the page a little bit, especially with all that sort of roughed up textured background. They needed something that'll help them sit on it without coming unstuck too easily. So you'll notice I sort of put things into those three clusters. That journaling block that I did the journaling in was actually already on the page, so it was kind of handy that it fitted nicely with where the photos were to be able to journal straight onto that paper. So now I've just grabbed some of the acrylic dots and shapes and just the shades of blue or teal or something that I felt tied in nicely with the Skylark collection. So just finishing them off with a few hearts around the place, dotting them in sort of those three triangle areas or in those three spaces that sort of forms a wee bit of a visual triangle, and there's all the textures. Now hope you've enjoyed watching this. Make sure you check out the links below for the other layouts where people have been stamping on their photos, and see what you can come up with in your creativity. Hey, thanks heaps for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you liked what you saw.